happening, HC Nation? Hey, Zach Edwards here for another Whatever Wednesday. This time I want to tell you about something that's very important that's going on. The Middle East has always been a big controversy. Ever since the Crusades, when the Christian armies were going down to Jerusalem, trying to take over the Holy Land, and the Muslim, Ottoman, all these different empires were trying to take it for themselves. There was actually peace in Jerusalem before the Crusades, before the Muslim and Arab nations tried to take over Jerusalem and kick out all the Christians. And then the Christians came down. There was actually peace in that area, and they actually could live together. And even now, it's still going on, where there's always battles. Right now, it's like most of the time, it's the Palestinians and the Israelis. And there's all these battles that are going on. Rockets and missiles being sent back and forth, bombings, all these different things. A lot of terrorism. It really shouldn't be that way. Before the Crusades, there was peace. And even today, there is some peace. Did you know that some of the leadership of Israel, though a Jewish nation, are actually Arabs? Yeah. They've brought in a lot of people from different places to bring in a diverse government. Though it's mostly a Jewish state, Jewish nation. It still has a lot of different influences, which they did on purpose because they wanted to bring some of the influences of other people, which, I mean, you can see in any business, it's just a good idea to diversify the people that work for you. Because you want to get other points of view, especially if your target market is someone that's going to be different from you. You want to be able to get that perspective. Well, that's what Israel did. But interesting enough, October is a very interesting month for Israel and their relationship with Egypt. I'll tell you this. This is the reason. So back in 1973, Egypt and Syria attacked Israel at the exact same time on one of the holiest days for the Israeli people, and that's Yom Kippur. On this day, they decided to attack from both sides, two fronts. And the idea was, even though that Israel had a more superior army and military, they wanted to at least bloody the nose of Israel and try to force them into signing different agreements with them that Israel didn't agree with. So Israel came back, pushed them back, and in the end, back in 1979, there was a treaty written between Egypt and Israel called the Camp David Accord or Treaty. This was a treaty between the two and also some of the other Arab nations to have peace in that land, because they had the 7-day war where the Arab nations attacked Israel, and I think Israel struck them first because they knew that there was going to be an immediate attack. They struck them first and took out their military so that they couldn't fight them. And it only lasted 7 days because that's all that Israel wanted to do, was to cripple their military so they wouldn't attack. So, but the interesting thing is, in 1973, there was the leader of Egypt was Sadat. Now Sadat worked with Syria to attack Israel from both sides. Then he was the one that he signed the Camp David Treaty. And then on October 6th, the exact same day that the attack happened from both sides, thanks to Egypt by Sadat, that exact same day, 8 years later, in 1981, it was actually the year before I was born, Sadat was assassinated. Now, some people would, I think at the time, thought it was the Jewish people basically attacking because of what had happened back then. I think there were some conspiracies of that. Come to find out, it was actually people in his own country that didn't like that he had signed the Camp David Treaty. And so because of that, they assassinated him. They killed him. So this comes to point that a lot of times we have struggles with other people, whether it's the Israelis or the Arab nations, whether it's a kid in school going against bullies. I'm not going to say who's the bully, but what I can say is that war is not always the answer. Battling them is not always the answer. Israel, during the 7-Day War, preemptively struck them so they wouldn't attack. This other time in 1973, they attacked from both sides, trying to attack Israel. At the Camp David Treaty, it was a great step towards peace, though I don't think there'll ever be peace in the Middle East. It was a great step trying to bring peace between the two nations, Egypt and Israel, and some of the other nations. Because some of them, even the Arab world, those countries, a lot of them are actually friendly with Israel. Though Israel is Jewish, more Jewish, and the other Arab nations are more Muslim, there's a lot of different sects, but those are the two understandings. There can be peace between them. At the same time, it's not likely to happen anytime soon. But when it comes to being at school or in your own neighborhood, there are other ways to interact with bullies. I want to tell you a story that happened to me and why it was so important for me to understand this lesson. I had a bully all through high school. I was a chunky kid that wasn't very athletic. I didn't have many friends. And yet, I had one guy that decided he was going to bully me. And he got me into a chokehold one time. And I actually reached down, grabbed his leg, threw it up in the air, and he fell back on his head. And I booked it out of there because all of his friends were coming too. I took off. I didn't want to fight him. Fighting wasn't the answer for me because I knew I would be beaten up because I had all these other guys that were his friends. Another time, he gets me into another chokehold, and this is not according to me. We were on a run. We were doing a figure 8, like a mile run. I pulled back his arm, moved my head out of the way to get away, let it go, and he clocked himself in the head, in the face. That was according to someone else that was there. Another time, he got me in a chokehold and laid back down on the ground so that I couldn't move. And I had my backpack on, and I was stuck until someone else rescued me. He was actually in gym class. And then the last time that he attacked me was he actually put me in a stranglehold. He actually put his hands around my throat. I don't know why. This guy had a vendetta against me. But he tried to suffocate me. Thing is, he put all the effort towards the back of my neck, which basically is all muscle. Up here is where the trachea is, and you lose a lot of breath by pushing up here. I mean, that's how real suffocation is created. And so I pushed my thumb into his trachea, and he stopped. And I left, and that was actually the last day of school. Long story short, I actually felt really bad about the relationship that I had caused with him and the anger that was caused between them. And I probably had a mouth on me that whenever he tried to attack me, I'd mouth off to him. I don't know. I can't look back. But what I can say is that years later, it was about 10 years ago. Actually, it was 10 years later because my 10-year anniversary for graduation from high school came. He wasn't there. But I lived in the city at the time. I went back to Alaska to live there in Juneau. And this young man, who wasn't young anymore, we were at an organization, we were at a gathering. He stands up and starts walking out. I think he had to leave early. He was there with his wife and his kid. And as soon as he stood up, I realized who he was. And I made an effort to understand that next time I saw him, I would finally apologize for how I had treated him. I didn't attack him. I wasn't his bully. He was my bully. But I still thought this, and when I saw him, I knew I had to go talk to him. So I ran out the door, and I apologized. And you know, funny enough, he didn't apologize back. But what he said was, "Oh, it's okay," and no hard feelings. Okay, sure. And then after that, we became associates. We actually worked on different things for different organizations together. And it was like nothing had ever happened. Come to find out, he had a lot of problems in his life. I found out that he had a lot of problems at home. He was selling drugs at the time. He was, after that, I mean, luckily, to some extent, he didn't get caught. And the reason why I say luckily is because he then joined the military, became a Marine, and his whole life turned around. So much that he had a child. He had, and I don't know if it was his wife or his girlfriend at the time, but he had someone. And after that, things changed for us. But I know in my life, it would not have changed if I hadn't made peace with him. I would have been constantly thinking about it. I can say right now, I don't have many regrets in my life. Many, I still do have some, but not ones that I haven't cleared up. Because I don't want that hanging over my head. And I don't want that hanging over anyone's head. So if you can take anything from this Whatever Wednesday, make peace with your bullies. Make peace with your quote-unquote enemies. It is not worth it for you, for that person, for anybody that's related to you, to go through any of the struggles that you might go through because you haven't resolved that thing in your life. You might be 8 years old and have a friend that you just argued with. Go make up. You might be 30 years old. I think at the time I was 30 years old, and meet your bully. Make things right. Or you can get an argument with your spouse if you're married, or even if you're dating, or whatnot. Make things right. You will never, ever regret apologizing. Even if it's not fully your fault, you'll never forget apologizing. Because you did everything you can. And then you put it into their hands that they have to do the same. But it's off your hands. Your hands are clean. And you don't have to worry about it. So I hope you're able to get something from this Whatever Wednesday. Sorry we went a little bit longer, but it was an important message. I hope you listen to it and you're able to get something from it. Thanks so much. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow actually. Take care. Bye.